And to announce the finalists in original oratory, Miss Ginny Veliani of Pierce. Okay. The first finalist in oratory is participant 112, Alexandra
is called Two Truths and a Lie. The rules are simple. I'm going to tell you 3 things about myself. 2 will be truths, and 1 will be a lie. So here goes. 1. I was the tallest kid in my 1st grade class. 2. I used to be a blonde. 3. I only learned how to tie my shoelaces last year. And now, you can think about which one is the lie I have told you. And by the end of my speech, I will reveal the whole and undeniable truth to you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been told time and time again that lying is ghastly, horrific, and terrible. We have grown up in a society which convinces us that lying is a sin, and we can and will most certainly go to hell if we do not tell the truth. As Mark Twain once said, truth is the most valuable thing we have, and this tends to be the ideology of people today. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am standing before you today to persuade you of the exact opposite. The lie is the most precious thing we have, and we should lie, because lying is inevitable, useful, and essential to our survival in society. Believe me, I'm not lying. Let's face it, lying is everywhere. Our whole life is constructed on lies. The question is, what do we lie about and to whom? As humans, we need to lie on 2 basic levels. The personal level, which includes lying to ourselves, and the interpersonal level, which includes lying to other people. First, the personal level. We generally don't admit that we lie to ourselves, although it's something we all do all the time. It's all about the human need to fit in. In fact, it's all about survival. We shape our character, our style, our looks, and our behavior in order to survive in our society. Now, speaking to the girls in this room, aren't we all expected to act like ladies, seem elegant and caring? And now to you guys, how many times do you exaggerate the truth in order to impress your bros? The girl who was all over you, or how many people you beat up in order to protect your friend? These rules of society force us to feel like we need to fit in, and hence we lie to ourselves, saying that this is the strategic thing to do. However, lying to fit in isn't all that bad. Psychologists say that it isn't money or material things that make an individual happy, but it is the number of true friends one has that is important. A human is a social being, and a lie helps him fulfill his need to belong, and thus makes him happier and more satisfied as a person. It makes life a little easier to go through. We don't only lie to squeeze ourselves into the mold of society, though. Lying is also a coping mechanism to the individual. How many times have you been in a difficult situation and whispered to yourself, "It's gonna be okay, right?" Right. Even if the situation had been a disaster at the end of the day, the lie you told yourself gave you motivation and helped you cope. For example, in any kind of accident, victims often convince themselves that they will survive, and that thought is usually what keeps them alive. This, in the medical language, is called the psychological placebo effect. But let's move on to the interpersonal level. Whether it's the antisocial lie, which would be to lie in order to hurt someone intentionally, the selfish lie, which we tell to save our own face, or the pro-social lie, told to protect the ones we love, we all use this magnificent device of lying to help us in our everyday social life. We tell antisocial lies because revenge is sweet and sometimes necessary in order to feel calm and balanced after being betrayed. People have affairs and often lie to their partner about being faithful, often to take revenge for living in a non-satisfying relationship. I never said it was moral, ladies and gentlemen, don't get me wrong, but it is often a useful and necessary tool for our social survival. The survival of the fittest, as Darwin supported, is a prominent characteristic of life. And this is where the selfish lie also comes in. We don't only lie for revenge, but for protection of ourselves and our relationships. Think of when you forgot to call your girlfriend on her birthday or were extremely late for a date. Making up an excuse, in other words, telling a lie, can save the day. "Oh, sweetheart, I didn't call earlier because I wanted to surprise you tonight," when you've completely forgotten all about the birthday. In these cases, lies are lifesavers. And finally, coming to the pro-social lie, the greatest one of all. It's the type people tell so that they can protect the ones they love. I remember my best friend, whose mother was in hospital suffering from cancer. Her health only seemed to deteriorate until it was clear to everyone that the end was near. My friend asked me if everything was going to be all right, and I replied that everything was going to be just fine. Unfortunately, subsequent events proved me lying. However, at the end of the day, the lie I told my friend helped her find the courage to accept a tragic yet inevitable reality. Whether it's about lying to other people for the protection of our social standing, our psychological health, our personal safety, our relationships, or the people we love, it is undeniable that the lie is an extremely useful device. Ladies and gentlemen, I have honestly tried to imagine a life without lies. And I have failed. A world where everybody told the truth no matter what is unthinkable. Without lies, our psychological abyss would be exposed, and we would have almost no means of protecting the heart and soul. We should thus accept that lying does not render us immoral, and it only proves that we are simply human. Oh, I'm sorry. I almost forgot about our little game. 2 truths and a lie, remember? So, which was the lie? My being the tallest kid? My once blonde hair? Or the fact that I only learned to tie my shoelaces last year? I know you've guessed it. They were all harmless little lies. Thank you.
Our next finalist is number 100, Mirto Groshopoulou.
Lot's wife was climbing the mountain, leaving the burning city behind her. "Don't look back, or you'll perish," the Lord had said. "The city will be covered by rain of fire and clouds of smoke, and no one will survive," the Lord had said. "Walk away. Don't look back, or there will be consequences." Sodom and Gomorrah would become a pile of ashes. Cautiously turning her head, she got a last glimpse of her old life being reduced to a colorless wreck of smoke. In less than a second, she was turned into a pillar of salt, condemned to face the ruins of the destroyed city for the rest of eternity. Religious parables teach that the act of disobedience deserves punishment. Myths show that if you commit hubris, you will roam endlessly in the sea, fighting against angry cyclones. Even fairy tales imply that if you do not listen to your parents, you will probably become a hungry wolf's next meal. The common message of all these stories is loud and clear. There is one value that rises above all others: obedience to authority. I disagree. Obedience to the law and reverence to authority serve to protect society from anarchy and chaos. But the ability to disobey, to listen to your conscience against what strikes you as unjust or illegitimate, marks and shapes your individuality. The act of disobedience per se is not always positive, desirable, or excusable. But the potential of every one of us to react when our conscience nudges us to do so is the most fundamental element of our identity as students. The ability to say no against what you're often conditioned to believe are the parameters of an accepted reality distinguishes you from the rest of the buzzing blur of people that move around you. The ability to say the opposite of what constitutes the truth for everyone surrounding you. The ability to shout when everyone remains silent. The ability to move when everyone stands still, rooted in indifference or apathy. The ability to listen to a whisper of the heart instead of the assuring voice of authority. This is what makes you an individual and not another brick in the wall. This is what makes your voice worth hearing, your pace worth noticing, your actions worth remembering. And when the risk of failure is too great, or when being trudged upon and silenced becomes an all too painful certainty, then it is that the ability to disobey shines in its importance. Because the power to assert your stand and follow your conscience, knowing that you'll only reach a dead end, grants the knowledge of you being a fully developed individual. Heroes are the ones that dare to say no when defeat is certain. Think of Socrates, who kept voicing his views, although he knew that his punishment lay in the case of a deathly hemorrhage. Socrates, who demonstrated that the unjust claims of the state are void in the realm of the conscience. He who showed that although authority could not bend his individuality, love for his own life did not exceed his respect for the laws of his polis. And the wisdom of such a move, the strength of will that it emanates, the personal dignity that marks it, is the reason why each and every one of us should embrace his ability to say no. As Mark Twain said, irreverence is the champion of liberty and its only sure defense. Being in a state of constant mental rebellion is not an act of betrayal, but an act of responsibility towards your society. Protest beyond the law is not a departure from democracy, it is absolutely essential to it. Under circumstances of social or political injustice, the ability to say no should be transformed into action. An action that will be publicly known, that will give a call for the re-establishment of justice, that will be non-violent. Because there is a fine line between wanting to achieve change and imposing change, voicing your view, and violently asserting it. A truly responsible, mature individual should exercise his ability and right to disobey, provided that it doesn't breach that of others. As Albert Camus said, absolute justice mocks at freedom. Absolute freedom denies justice. To be fruitful, the two ideas must find their limits in each other. Maintaining our ability and right to disobey under circumstances of injustice is a responsibility to our society, but also to our own self. Only by way of rebellion can we assert, within a social frame, the knowledge of our humanity. Perpetual commitment to civil disobedience is as necessary for the full development of the individual as the existence of individuals prepared to commit to civil disobedience is necessary for the establishment of a human rights-oriented society. Many people today commit the suicide of silence, the self-destruction of uncompromising acceptance. Many people prefer to remain indifferent or apathetic. Many people choose to erase their identity by suppressing their ability to say no. But if you do not want to be one of these people, if you want to become an individual, to be thought of as truly human, notice your heart's promptings. Listen to your conscience's commands. Stand firmly on the path of your values and do not let anyone force you to diverge from it. Know that the only urge that you should never disobey is that of justifiable disobedience itself. For, as Rudyard Kipling said, if you can keep your head when all around you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, yours will be the earth and everything that's in it. Thank you.
Our third finalist is number 221, Fanilio Peri from Pierce.
world is full of different kinds of them. Words that people like or dislike, with many synonyms and antonyms. Words with a specific or vague meaning. There are also words short that still describe huge ideas. For example, life, love. These are short but incredibly important words. And if you look them up in the L section of the dictionary, after them, you will encounter the word luck. One day, I asked myself what luck is, and realized that it's such an exciting and strange idea, but so controversial as well. If you think about it, each and every one of us in this room will define the word luck differently. Lucille Ball once said, "Luck? I don't know anything about luck. I've never banked on it, and I'm afraid of people who do. Luck to me is something else. Hard work and realizing what is opportunity and what is not." On the other hand, the Oxford English Dictionary suggests that luck is the events or circumstances that operate for or against an individual. So what is luck really about? I have to admit that I used to be one of those people who support that luck is the privilege of some, and that you're born either lucky or unlucky. Fortunately, there came a time that I realized that I had to change my views, because what I stood for was not rational. And also, the only thing that I accomplished with that pessimistic attitude was to harm myself. So here I am today, ladies and gentlemen, totally changed, and hoping that this oratory will change your views as well, and that you'll be persuaded that we can indeed make our own luck. These first few thoughts may have already crossed your mind, but before you say so what, or reject them, let me ask you this. Are you doing everything you can in your everyday life in order to make your luck and take your luck in your hands? Because yes, you can, since luck is mostly a matter of hard work, positive thinking, being open to new experiences, and optimism. Richard Wiseman once said that we can actually influence our luck by the way we behave and think. Richard Wiseman is a professor of public understanding of positive thinking and psychology at the University of Hertfordshire, who spent 10 years of his life studying luck. He conducted a simple experiment. First, asked people to categorize themselves as unlucky and lucky, and then he gave both groups a newspaper and asked them to tell him how many photographs were in it. On average, the unlucky people took several minutes, whereas the lucky people just a few seconds. Do you want to know why? Well, the second page of the newspaper contained a message. Stop counting, there are 43 photographs in the newspaper. Although this message was staring everybody straight in the face, and it took half of the page, the unlucky people didn't notice it, because they were too busy looking for photographs. Generally speaking, those people who consider themselves to be unlucky miss opportunities because they're too focused on looking for something and they're not open to being expected. And we all know that best things happen when we don't expect them to happen. All in all, lucky people are lucky, not because they were born lucky, but because they are open and relaxed and therefore see what is there rather than what they're looking for. Moreover, luck is definitely a matter of hard work. Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States, once said, "I'm a great believer in luck, and I find the harder I work, the more I have of it." Luck, ladies and gentlemen, will not come and knock on our doors. We have to pursue it. If we want to succeed and have luck, we cannot just wait in the corner and do nothing. Instead, we have to make things happen. We have to work really hard, create and chase opportunities, and face obstacles, of course. A great example is the case of Tim Allen, a well-known comedian in the United States. Tim Allen was just 11 years old when a drunk driver tragically killed his father. He used humor to hide his pain, and in the process of being funny, he realized that he had a gift for entertainment. Unfortunately, humor was not enough to meet his loss, and he became addicted to alcohol and drugs, and he was arrested. However, when Tim Allen released from jail, he realized that he had to stay focused and work really hard, and so he went on to do stand-up comedy. And during 1 week in 1994, Tim Allen had the #1 TV show, a best-selling book, and the #1 film. This, ladies and gentlemen, proves that even tragedy can be overcome through hard work. On the other hand, there are many people who support that luck is simply our fate, our karma, our kismet, and they also support that actually someone can increase his luck by having lucky charms. But this is called superstition, and there is just one problem. Superstition does not work. Several researchers have tried to test the validity of various superstitions, and they found that they're not effective. Among them is Richard Wiseman, who asked a group of volunteers to carry a lucky charm with them, which promised to bring good fortune. After several weeks, there was absolutely no effect on terms of how happy they were, how lucky they felt, or how satisfied they were with their lives. Just think about it. Is it possible for a horse troop or a rabbit troop to affect their lives more than us? Of course, I have to admit that yes, there are some events in life that we cannot control, but not because it's our destiny, but because there are some events in life that happen by chance in our life. All in all, we can control a lot of situations in life, more than those that we cannot. We just have to make choices that will affect our lives more positively, and not to dwell on those things that might occur and that we might not be able to control. In the long run, do we have anything to gain? Life is what we make it. So even if God gives us lemons, we have to make lemonade. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you've seen a different perspective on luck, according to which luck is not karma, fate, destiny, or a force of nature coming and going as inevitably as a tide, but it's actually a matter of positive thinking, hard work, optimism. Besides, as Winston Churchill said, be an optimist. There is not much use in being anything else. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, let's admit it. There is something about leaving everything up to fate that cripples our journey. If we sit back and do nothing, let time pass by, then we have no say in our future, or in what we may become. But since we have the opportunity to make our own luck and take our lives in our hands, we owe it firstly to ourselves to do so. Anyone can. We just have to find this extraordinary, let's say, formula that suits each one of us. Whether we have to be more positive, more optimistic, or work harder, and put it into practice. At the end of the day, we have nothing to lose, only to gain, so we can at least strive. And I'd like to leave you with these extraordinary words of Tennessee Williams. Luck, ladies and gentlemen, is reliving your life. Do not forget it. Thank you.
Our next finalist is number 209, from Pierce! Pierce! That was Pierce!
Here I am. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and the first draft of my oratory is due tomorrow. I've had over 2 months to plan, organize, and meticulously write my speech. And when do I choose to start writing? 10 freaking hours before it's due. Classic. I wearily sit in front of my computer, my eyelids drooping down, ready to slam shut while they stare into a blank Word document. The vertical cursor winking on and off, eager to start morphing into words. I look at the clock, 3:30, and I haven't even thought of the topic yet. The topic! You'd think that 2 months is enough to come up with a topic, but no! I have to wait till I'm literally on the verge of collapse until I start to think of a topic. And suddenly, it hit me. It hit me harder than a direct jab by Mike Tyson to the face. This whole situation, this whole light I was in, was the topic. I realized suddenly, and quite painfully, that I have absolutely no idea of how to prioritize. None. Zip. Nada. But thankfully, at least for the sake of this speech, neither do the other 900 million teenagers that live on planet Earth. Now, when I say that teenagers have no clue on how to handle their time correctly, don't even remotely begin to believe that I'm implying that all you grown-ups do, because I'm not. Nor am I saying that there aren't some teenagers who handle their time perfectly fine and get their business in order. But let's face it, most of you are like me. We act as if the idea of being punctual and getting our work done is a federal crime. As if being okay with our obligations and having time to spare is a deadly sin. Like the very notion of being ahead of schedule terrifies us. Doing Thursday's homework on Tuesday. Oh, the horror! So, keeping that in mind, I would like to try to convince you, and myself for that matter, to start using your time more wisely. And even though that sounds cliche and like something my mom would say, I would still like to try. So without further ado, the guy who doesn't know how to prioritize will teach you, you guessed it, how to prioritize. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that beginning a speech with ladies and gentlemen is overrated, so I'll start again. Guys and gals, I'm sure that we, as teenagers, want to work. It's not that we detest work, and whether it is homework, schoolwork, housework, hard work, or any compound word with the term work in it, we have no problem actually doing it. The excruciating part is mustering the energy and commitment to begin working. There's this imaginary barrier between preparing mentally to work and actually working. If a strong-hearted teenager overcomes the unstoppable force of gravity and touches the pencil to the paper, then it's over. Mission accomplished. For example, it took me 2 hours of browsing through YouTube and Facebook to begin writing this paragraph. As soon as I typed the first word, boom, in 5 minutes it was over. Prioritizing and managing your time correctly is crucial if you want to make it through your high school years intact. Most young people believe that if you postpone doing something, you're gaining an advantage, because you can rest now and do it later. The thing that we fail to realize is that just because we don't do something now, doesn't mean that all other work ceases to exist, and that your loving and caring teachers will stop giving you homework just so you can catch up. This illusion leads to work stacking up. And when work stacks, you fall behind. And when you fall behind, you need to lose sleep in order to catch up. And when you lose sleep, you act like a dysfunctional zombie. And then your grades go down. And then your parents act like blood-sucking vampires. And while you're caught in this odious horror movie, you ask yourself, what did I do wrong? The answer is that you didn't manage your time correctly. Let me give you an example of how teenagers normally prioritize. I made a list of everyday activities that a teenager normally does. Then, I proceeded to list these in order of importance and need-to-do basis. 1 being extremely important, and 10 being ridiculously unimportant to the point of laughter. 1. Sleep. 2. Eat. 3. Log on to Facebook. 4. Sleep some more. 5. Watch funny cat videos on YouTube. 6. Walk around aimlessly in the house. 7. Stare at the wall. 8. Stare at the ceiling. 9. Pretend to do homework for the eyes of your parents. And 10. When you've surfed the internet to the point where your own browser is screaming at you, come on dude, get a life! Then, actually do homework. Mission accomplished. A rather big culprit in the situation is definitely the internet, and generally technology for that matter. Now, I'm not going to be one of those people who rant about how, oh, technology is poisoning the youth and diverting them from their goals and obligations. But seriously, technology is poisoning the youth and diverting them from their goals. Because standard oratory etiquette states that you have to use at least one statistic to strengthen your argument, get this for a fact. On a survey conducted by the Kaiser Family Foundation, it was calculated that the average teen spends an estimated 7.5 hours a day on media outlets, such as texting, browsing, and watching TV. This accumulates to approximately 2,500 hours a year. Let me give you a minute to let that sink in. Seeing as I only have 3 minutes left, I think that 5 seconds will suffice. 2,500. That's like quadruple digits. Now, the way I see it, there are 2 solutions. 1 is to try to obliterate the internet from our lives. I'm sure that sounds very anti-21st century, but I'm also certain that most of our computer use is counterproductive to the point of sheer stupidity. Sure, you might say, the internet solves all our problems and connects the world. But if it's doing so at the expense of your mental integrity, then what's the point? So do yourselves a favor and burn your PCs. Or, if you're not so hot at arson, try to restrain yourself from limiting your computer use. You'll have so much extra time that it will be literally dripping out of your pockets. The second solution is to try to set goals for yourselves. See, we humans are like donkeys. We need a carrot dangling in front of us in order to get our butts moving. So always try and reward yourself when you get stuff done on time. Prioritize your obligations, get your work done, and when you have time to spare, because you will, go crazy and have fun. Then treat yourself to a cookie. Well, what good is the oratory without a good conclusion? The conclusion of the oratory is the most important part. The cream of the crop. The crème de la crème. But, seeing as it was almost 6 o'clock in the morning, I had to desperately find a way to conclude before my brain shut down and I fell on the floor unconscious. As my English teachers have always taught me, it's good to end a speech with a quote. Because somebody has already said it best. So if you can't top him, steal from him and go out strong. As Harvey McKay put it, time is free, but it's priceless. You can't own it, but you can use it. You can't keep it, but you can spend it. And once you've lost it, you can never get it back. Thank you.
Is number 121, Constantinos.
Switch off the television right now, or I'm warning you. I'm going to call your father. Common sense dictates that television exerts a bad influence on everyone, but especially the younger generation. The television, or as my mother likes to call it, the demon box, gets 5 stars for its convincing role as #1 reason my child didn't have better marks at school. In the past, an excessive chores and homework have been critically acclaimed as the best way for youth to receive an education. I am here, though, ladies and gentlemen, to break this myth down into tiny, little pixels, because I believe that this role has been miscast. I'm here to persuade you that watching television is beneficial. Nicholas Johnson once said, all television is educational. The question is, what is it teaching us? Television reinforces our relationships with other people. It broadens our knowledge, and it cranks up the volume and comprehension of global issues. In fact, it even reminds us that, hey, maybe our lives aren't so bad after all. A steaming bag of popcorn, remote controller in hand. I nominate that there is nothing more special than watching a riveting episode of CSI Miami with my family on a Sunday evening. And there's something very ironic about learning to never leave evidence behind after committing a crime, when having my mother and my father by my side. Here we all are making these funny comments, bursting out laughing at my father's imitation of the infamous, the legend, wait for it, the legendary Horatio Klein look. We experienced a type of bonding that isn't always available during the regularly scheduled program of algebra homework. Apart from improving relationships between families, television also strengthens bonds between friends. Take my friends and I. We often gather in someone's house to watch a football match, a basketball game, or even to catch up and then watch a movie. Just last week, we had this crucial conversation about how Megan Fox improves or hinders the movie Transformers. Sex appeal versus acting, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think my friends and I could possibly be such skilled communicators today if it wasn't for these types of epic debates we have. I'm sure that all of you have heard that television fries your brain. I blame those three, how did they even become famous sisters? The Kardashians. They gave my baby a bad name. But ladies and gentlemen, even the most mind-numbing shows can teach us something. Watch The West Wing and you'll discover how to manage the labyrinth of power in Washington, D.C. Catch an episode of Grey's Anatomy and you'll know how to deliver a baby if you're stuck in an elevator. Tune into Eurovision and you'll receive a lesson in geopolitical alliances as they currently exist in Europe. For free. There are many other shows that explicitly cultivate our knowledge and further our understanding of the world. For example, there are educational television channels, such as the History Channel and the Travel Network, which offers interesting insights into our past, as well as the emerging interconnectedness, which is our future. I recall one Saturday morning when the history of the Byzantine Empire unfolded before me, an era of great literature, fine art, and modern government, an empire that extended across the Asian Minor to the Balkans. I naturally channel surf when I learned that Constantinople is now Istanbul. I stumbled upon Animal Planet. Rest in peace, Steve Irwin. Did you know that pigs are unable to look at the sky and that fish can actually drown? Who knew? This is the terrible price I pay for being a couch potato for one single hour. Nowadays, because of the economic crisis in Greece, television connects us as a society to think critically how to solve our problems and to provide a space as citizens to communicate our feelings. An outlet, you might say. What you once might have considered boring, our politicians debating in the parliament, is now essential and rather entertaining TV viewing. In fact, it reminds me of this Cafe Neon effect, since it looks like the way people act in Greek taverns. Think about it for a moment. This exposure actually improves our critical thinking skills and helps us formulate our own opinions. Lastly, television teaches us how to cope with life itself. Think of every TV show that you have watched, even cartoons. Has there been one where the characters do not face problems? Even superheroes, Batman and Superman, face dilemmas in order to save the world while looking good in spandex, ladies and gentlemen. When my friend recently watched Days of Our Lives and saw that Hope had been brainwashed by the evil Stephanie, who had also killed her twin sister, she realized that her breakup wasn't the worst thing in the world. We become content about our own situations. We become more confident with every new step we take in our lives. So, ladies and gentlemen, you never know in life when you might learn something new, or from where that valuable insight may come from. They say that television is a terrible waste of our time. And yet, where do you think our biggest of ideas come from? We ought to learn and be inspired by everything. By watching television, we learn how to better communicate with other people. We comprehend how we should act towards others. We become critical thinkers. We process every pixel of information transmitted to us carefully in order to finally determine how to apply it to our everyday lives. In fact, we become better citizens. I will never forget Leo's phrase in the West Wing. Let's raise the public debate in this country and let that be our legacy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we should watch television 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Unless, of course, there's a 24-hour marathon of 24, in which case I say, go for it. Seriously, there are times when we should know that we must simply turn the box off, get up, run outside, breathe in the fresh air, and apply what you have learned from watching all of these shows. With that said, an episode of Friends is on, and I hear it's a classic. You know, the one where Ross claims to Rachel, "But we were on a break!" So come, ladies and gentlemen, sit beside me and let's watch some TV, because it's beneficial and fun. No worries, my mother won't be home for at least 2 more hours. Thank you.
Our final finalist is number 224, Callie Mikhailov from Pierce.
How many times have you been the casual observer of 2 people in the midst of a rather intimate act? Or how many times have you been unwittingly flashed in your own home? Now you are probably wondering, what in the world is she talking about? Well, picture this. You're sitting in your living room watching TV, and hey, that girl who up until now was running is shot dead. Blood pools around her, and her jaw slackens. Change of scene. Now that same girl is a wonderfully pale and bluish corpse lying on the autopsy table. Most likely there's someone probing it too. Now tell me, as you're sitting there watching this, do you feel shocked, upset, disturbed? I may be wrong, but judging from personal experience, I'm pretty sure you think it's ridiculous of me to even ask such a question. You're probably just crunching away on your Cocoa Puffs for all I know, right? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is but a simple example of one of the characteristic phenomena of our age. We live in the age of apathy, boredom, and world weariness. An age in which we are insatiable and yet passive consumers of pop culture products, and more dangerously, pop culture values, or lack of values, period. An age in which the lines of what is beautiful and what is vulgar have been stretched and blurred to such an extent that we can't quite distinguish between the two anymore. And what may begin as a matter of aesthetics soon translates into a matter of values, individual and societal. Our growing numbness to all things shocking, mainly thanks to the media, inevitably leads us to a certain form of immorality. Not even immorality, but amorality, which is defined as being neither moral nor immoral, but rather displaying an indifference towards both right and wrong. It would seem that anything goes, and only few people will bother to grimace and complain. For the rest of us, a shrug and the ready excuse of freedom of expression and subjectivity will suffice. As Dr. Jim Taylor said, we're on a slippery slope in which pop culture has to go lower and lower to attract attention. But I'm just wondering, how far can we tumble before we crash? So why don't we get shocked? As you've probably already guessed, the media is a key factor. I don't know if you're familiar with the term MTV generation, but apparently that's us. It refers to anyone born in the late 20th and early 21st century, and as such, we are known for our ability to process information quickly, and we're also constantly connected to media technologies, and then we move on to the next cool thing, also known as a short attention span. The root of all evil, Our constant bombardment with all this information, often trivial, and all these images which are amped up with shock value. In our market-driven society, anything goes, and only few people will bother to grimace and complain. And the consumers are always interested in seeing the lowest and lowest of society, of pop culture. As Susan Sontag said, you know how the more you take a drug, the more immune to it you get? Well, we are becoming increasingly immune to shock value. As Susan Sontag said, the tepid, the glib, and the senselessly cruel topics are becoming the norm, especially amongst the youth who are growing up immersed in them. And what are the two favorite topics of marketing shock value? Violence and sex, of course. Take one of Rihanna's popular hits, for example, S&M, which stands for sadomasochism. Now, for those of you who haven't seen it, it involves rather blatantly crude lyrics, and is pretty graphic, in a candy-colored packaging. Now, when my mom saw it, she was shocked that it was even played on primetime TV. But my little cousin, she is content with singing and dancing along as Rihanna writhes and ropes on screen. And as far as I'm concerned, I find I'm neither offended by it, nor particularly amused. The same goes for violence. We're exposed to so much of it that it ceases to impress us. We're numbed by it and to it. Death and tragedy are voided of any true meaning, as are other hate realities. And as Van de Haag has said, all mass media in the end alienate people from personal experience, and though appearing to offset it, intensify their moral isolation from reality, from each other, and from themselves. So where does that leave us? Overwhelmed, immune, and constantly being bombarded with more. And what's worse, children are taking the brunt of it, since it is during childhood and adolescence when one starts forming his or her identity, and one of the most significant influences is environment. Take a characteristically Greek example, the kiosks, or peritheras as we know them, and their lovely display of porn magazines, right at toddler eye level. Who is their target group again? In a study examining the correlation between values and television in 9 to 11-year-olds, conducted by Yalda Tiyuls, a UCLA doctoral student in developmental psychology, on a list of 16 values, benevolence, being kind and helping others, fell from second place, where it was in 1997, to 13 in 2007, and tradition dropped from 4th to 50, whereas fame jumped from the 15th spot to the 1st. Yules showed concern that there was such a dramatic decrease in values such as community feeling, and such an increase in narcissistic fame. Worry concerning this numbness and indifference has also spread to the political scene. A vast majority of our peers doesn't care about politics, having resigned to what will be, will be. U.S. educational philosopher Robert Maynard Hutchins stated that the death of democracy is not likely to be an assassination from ambush. It will be a slow extinction from apathy, indifference, and undernourishment. Ladies and gentlemen, we are descending into a casual apathy in the name of progress, evolution, and individualism. In our postmodern era, anything goes. Nothing shocks. There's no right and wrong. We've seen it all, and we continue to do so, because the media propagates the lowest aspects of our humanity. So what is the solution? Not censorship. In the name of protecting children and the public, in the past decades, governments have banned such books as An American Tragedy, Ulysses, Lolita, all of which are now acclaimed masterpieces. Censorship lends itself to misuse and abuse. And not only would it deprive citizens of an essential right, freedom of expression, but it would also be extremely inefficient, since nowadays everything is just a few clicks away when it's not blaring in your face. But the problem remains. John Despasos, a U.S. novelist, said it all in a nutshell. Apathy is one of the characteristic responses of any living organism when it is subjected to stimuli too intense or too complicated to cope with. The cure for apathy is comprehension. Ladies and gentlemen, comprehension, awareness, and the cultivation of the desire to search for essence and quality is the only answer I've come to. After all, I've heard that the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. The opposite of art is not ugliness, it's indifference. And the opposite of life is not death, it's indifference. So what are we doing living in this limbo? How do we escape it? Honestly, I don't have the answer, but what I do know is that the solution is somewhere within each of us, and that one of the key ingredients is being engaged. Engaged with people, and not just their profiles. Engaged with art, and not just any old thing you're fed. Engage with life, and not just its simulation. The key is in the excitement or silent awe that you feel for the little things. And ladies and gentlemen, that is something that we must hold on to. Thank you.
Honorable mentions. Number 14, Nicholas Moschopoulos from St. Number 203, Julia Alkaila. Number 92, Andreas Athanasopoulos. Number 119, Christina Polat. Number 354, Panos Yogos from Gitonas. We'd also like to thank the judges, Mr. Plastaras, Mr. Konakis, and Mrs. Iliadou.